Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Sam Dever Podcast, episode 82. In this episode, I speak with Imran Ahmed, also known as Captain Ron. Imran is the founder of Great Pods, which is a website that has professional critics' reviews and ratings of podcasts. Think of it as the Rotten Tomatoes for podcasts. I met Imran at a networking event for podcasts. He's a great guy, very intelligent, very enthusiastic, and I learned a lot from this conversation. The book of the episode, which I thought was very fitting to the topic of startups and entrepreneurship, is Hatching Twitter by Nick Bilton. This is one I'm almost done with. I've really enjoyed it. It's the story of Twitter, how they came to be, the struggles, the triumphs they went through as they became one of the biggest social networks in the world. Again, it is Hatching Twitter by Nick Bilton. If you want to listen to this podcast, be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you want to watch the podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@thesamdeverpodcast. Here's my conversation with Imran. Captain Ron, welcome to the Sam Dever Podcast.
Hey, I don't think I've said this yet, but thanks for having me. Thanks for reaching out. Thanks for meeting me. Thanks for thanks for everything.
No, this is great. And Eric and I were talking. I mean, what's it been, a month since we went to the podcast movement meetup in Burbank? And you know how the networking events go. You're not going to be able to talk to everybody. You're going to have a lot of quick conversations. Some you'll forget people's names. You don't get contact info. But you were one person right off the bat, just really engaged with you. And when you told me with what you did, I'm like, what, you do what? And the startup scene and everything like that, I'm like, okay, I got to talk to you further. So I'm glad. This is awesome that we've been able to actually continue a connection, connecting on LinkedIn, messaging back and forth. And I don't want to tell too much about what you do because I want you to tell it. The founder of Great Pods, which totally blew my mind. I had no idea that existed. And for a podcaster, it's so needed. It's such, I think it's awesome. So thank you for coming in.
My pleasure.
Meeting in the real life.
Yeah, no, awesome. I'm happy to do it. I love that night. Also, I was just probably talking a mile a minute and be like, I just had this information. Somebody wanted to listen. I will dish it out. That sort of conversation. It was like, no problem. If you're interested in hearing my experience and learning from it and trying out your own things from it, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one thing I observed too, is like, okay, this guy really knows his stuff, what he's doing in and out. Because sometimes people don't quite know what they're doing yet. They don't know their brand as well. But with you, it was like da 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 da. And like I said,
I just want to say that there's that thing. It's been showing up on memes too, but like work memes type of style that nobody knows what they're really doing. Like managers don't see,
right.
And there's that truth to it. Like I don't know what I have this end goal, and so half the time I don't know what I'm doing because I need to test and iterate to see what works to get me to the goal. So it takes many roads to get to the goal. And eventually at the end, I can be like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. But no, like we're testing and iterating things that are presented to us as tools. And we're just trying to figure it out. It's not like we don't know what we're doing. We're just trying to figure it out.
Well, as someone once told me in terms of startup world, which like I was telling you before we started, meeting you has actually inspired me back into wanting to get into the startup world. Because that's one thing too, when you said, this is a startup, building this from scratch. And someone once told me, build the plane while flying it. A lot of times is what startup life can be like.
It's dangerous.
We may crash.
Yeah.
But we know where we want to go, but we gotta get going, but we may not be fully ready, but we still gotta go.
Yeah, we're on the original 1920s Kenny Bunkport. It's a Bunkport. We're in Orville and Wilbur's like plane right now. But it's multi-layer. It's like it's ready to fall apart, but we're pedaling our way and trying to get some air wind to like lift us up a little bit. That's where we're kind of at, and that's where I feel like I'm kind of there. Is starting to lift up. It kind of drops down to the ground a little bit and starting to pick up again. That sort of I guess that sort of analogy. That's there. Yeah.
Well, and you said something before we started too about being in the middle stage. And I feel, everyone sees the end goal when someone hits it big or gets big investment or is
Yeah.
doing really well, nationally recognized or globally recognized, or in the beginning stages, it's novel, we're pumped up, we haven't been let down yet. Yeah, haven't had obstacles.
Yeah.
But I 110% agree with you. The middle is the toughest part of the road, but I think it's also the most satisfying in a way too, because it's really going to make who you are and what your brand's going to be. So with that all being said, could you tell me the story of Great Pods and how that all came about?
Yeah. And thanks for, again, I just want to say thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
This is also great for anybody that wants to practice their craft too, and telling their story. I've realized that in the pitches that I've been doing is practice, practice, practice. So this is fantastic. So I'm glad to be here. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I started Great Pods around 2020, September 2020. So it was like the pandemic already had started, and I was in San Francisco at the time. My co-founder at the time, he was an engineer. I worked with him for about 4 years. I worked at TuneIn Radio, the TuneIn Radio app, for about 8 years, 7 to 8 years. He was my first friend and buddy from those first 4 years. We got to talking, and he was trying to do his own startup, but he asked me after my TuneIn days, he's like, "What do you want to work on?" It's like, I want to still do something in the audio space, something that, where a manager wasn't listening. There's a lot of kind of problems stem out when somebody is not listening. Like, no, there's something there. Okay, well, I'm going to have to do it myself type of mentality. So that's where it kind of was starting to form. It only really took off when I started to work at Himalaya, which is another podcast app. I think they turned it into a learning audio app now. But that February of 2020, I started working there, and no shade to the likes of them, but I learned through that process. It was a small startup team, another startup, because I enjoy startups, that in that time frame, I realized my experience wasn't being used to its fullest ability from all those years I was working at TuneIn. And so at that point, it was just kind of just let go and start your own startup. You just go. The parents, the old folks back home down here in LA needed the help. They're not going to go out grocery shopping. There's something serious going on. So I might as well just not pay San Francisco rent. Let me come back down to LA, move in, and literally start a garage startup. And that's how it started physically. Mentally, when I was working with my engineering buddy, he kind of just helped me kind of brainstorm on paper what were the problems I was seeing in the podcast space. And so this problem is actually a personal problem of mine. I really enjoyed Siskel and Ebert growing up. Whether you like the reviews or not, you still tuned in every week. If you were a fan of theirs, thumbs up, thumbs down, doesn't matter. It was entertaining as well. I enjoyed reading Leonard Maltin. There's like a thick book of movie criticism. So movie criticism was kind of that spur of it. It's like, are there podcast critics that are out there? So that was my question to ask. So then I went down the deep dive of Googling podcast criticism and podcast critics, land on a couple of big publications, small blogs. I was like, oh, there are some podcast critics. I don't think anybody knows them. If I don't know about it, and I've been in the space for about 8 to 10 years, I'm like, nobody really has talked about podcast criticism. Meanwhile, there are some newsletters that are out there I didn't notice until I started Googling. So I started aggregating them together. I was like, what if I created the Rotten Tomatoes for podcasts and aggregate professional reviews for podcasts? I listened to a couple of episodes where the Rotten Tomatoes co-founders were being interviewed and their journey back in 2000, 2001. They had a Jackie Chan story about, I think it was Rumble in the Bronx. That was their first movie, I believe, that they aggregated into the platform. But then Bug's Life was a movie that boosted their site on there. But anyway, regardless, there was that journey. There was that journey with Rotten Tomatoes that kind of re-inspired me for aggregating these reviews for podcasts. So that's how it kind of formulated into what we have today.
Okay. And when you told me, I think one of the first things you told me when I was at, you're like Rotten Tomatoes for podcasts.
Yeah.
And boom. Like, oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
Real quick, if I could go back, What exactly was TuneIn?
So TuneIn is a live radio and podcast app. So
Okay.
I guess it's aggregations in my blood type of thing, but they aggregated the world's radio. That was one of their taglines too. But literally, it was the world's radio. I loved the app. I enjoyed working there. I still use it to this day, listening to like a San Diego radio station, because K-Rock. I was gonna throw shade at K-Rock because K-Rock sucks now. But I would be listening to K-Rock up there while you know,
Right.
it's kind of those. It was internet streaming, right? Internet radio streaming. I loved it. But they also had podcasts as well. So that was, they had millions of app downloads and listeners monthly for years and years and years. Live radio, live sports, live everything, from NBA to the NFL, you know, that sort of thing, play by play. That's what TuneIn Radio was. Himalaya was just strictly a podcast app.
So it's interesting how you had been in that space in some form that led you
Aggregation, audio,
Right.
entertainment,
right.
podcasts, yeah.
So it all makes sense.
And it's fascinating you put it that way. Yeah, it all kind of led to this breaking point of, I'm just going to go fucking do it myself
Yeah.
and just try it. I mean, I guess I should say it was by myself. I had help with my engineering buddy. Like, I kind of drew it out. He did such a good job of forcing me to do a lot of this non-engineering work. He tried to teach me a little bit of engineering. I kind of resisted. I kind of tried to learn. Didn't happen. So I did everything else, like tried to build out my own personal design. What are the sites? Just kind of piecing together everything non-engineering, reviews, pulling together reviews. And then the first draft of it was on Google spreadsheets. That's how like simplified it was as a draft. And then he would go in and then look at the engineering stuff of what can we do, how can I put this together?
So you had the vision, and then he goes, okay, this
gotta
is your
help me,
vision. Let
yeah.
me build the technical.
He's like, I need this information. Then I'll go out and do the dirty work of aggregating 4 or 5 reviews of a podcast, logo building, all that stuff that we would see on the podcast page. I went and got it for him to kind of connect the dots.
Okay, gotcha. So that's where I wanted to go next was, so you decide I'm going to do this thing. Great Pod's the name. Is there any special story behind that?
There's no special thing to that.
It's a great name, by the way.
I don't know how much we want to put in there. I don't know how much we're going to put in here as far as competitors are concerned, or slight competitors. I wanted to be Rotten Tomatoes / Goodreads. Do you know about Goodreads.com?
I think I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
It's like the IMDb for books.
Okay.
You know, like,
Makes
and
sense.
it is owned by Amazon also. They bought
You
them
can
out.
read books on that too, can't you?
I'm not quite sure.
Thought you could, never mind.
But you can rate, review. It's the full library of books all over the world. Millions of users, you know, readers out there. They go, that's the spot you go to for books.
Okay.
Not Barnes and Noble or IMDb or anything. You go to Goodreads. And so I wanted that mixture of Goodreads which had the user part of it, and then the Rotten Tomatoes where it had the critics part of it. So I wanted to have that mixture. So when I thought about the name, I wanted it to be Good Pods. Let me just copy the name Goodreads to Good Pods. And so that summer, when I was looking to register the name, it was already taken and it was under construction. And I was like, under construction, who's it? And somebody podcast, who's there? There's no information. I can't find any information. And then probably December or January of the following year, they had launched the Good Pods app, which is just it's a podcast app.
Okay.
I was like, damn it. That's what it was. But then I changed it. I was like, why be good when you can be great? So I changed it to Great Pods, and that's also great for SEO. So those twofold, it's nothing like terribly creative. I feel like in the future, I would want a more creative name, but in the time being, while I'm building this up, like keep it simple, stupid.
Simple to remember.
Just Great Pods. It may get a little dicey during the festival that I was at on Air Fest when I would be talking about it. I'd be saying it in a loud room, and I say Great Pods, and they're like, grape, like the food grape. I was like, no, Great Pods. I'm like, shit, okay. So there is that thought about it. So I registered the business as Great Pods Incorporated. So I think when I may do in the future, don't quote me on this now, don't time date this, where it's like Great Pods is going to be the overall structure of the company, and then I'll have umbrella little sites underneath that. So, this may end up being smashedpeas.com. I don't know, like Rotten Tomatoes, smashed peas, peasinapod.com. Things like that would be under the umbrella of Great Pods Incorporated.
Right. No, that makes sense. And really, as we're talking this out and going back to our conversation, when you're saying Rotten Tomato of podcasts, a couple things. One, first of all, yes, there's so many podcasts out there now. There's more podcasts out there now that I even thought there was out there. There's millions. But that being said, too, it's like the space is growing so fast still. So who knows under that Great Pods umbrella, the different things things that we don't even know may have a need for yet.
Yeah. That was a surprising thing. That's the awesome part about startups. Are the surprising ways it could surprise you. Man, lack of better words here. Surprising way to surprise you is like when you're going through this journey, something is just gonna pop over here in the analytics dashboard, and like, where did that come from? And then you start investigating. The fun part about investigating your analytics, and then you're like, oh crap, this came from Reddit. Oh, I need to go find this thing, and then it just blows up from there. Like, there's just certain things like this that keep you ignited throughout this journey.
Yeah.
Especially with your podcast, maybe you're looking at analytics a little deeper, maybe YouTube analytics a little deeper, and finding that. What have you found since we last talked?
Yeah.
Have you found anything of notable that you're trying out now? You're in the process of trying out.
Oh man, yeah, that's a great question. Really, YouTube has been a main focus. Well, let me start with Great Pods because I need to
answer
thank
my
you.
goddamn question.
Yeah, I need to thank you because, and proud to say, the Sam Dever podcast is now on Great Pods.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. But the intake form, I was real, and these are things I knew I had to do, but sizzle reel, press kit. I'm like, I have not done either of those two things. So that is on my to-do of, I should have a press kit. Yeah, I should have. So that, what I appreciate with places like yours, it really makes you as the creator get your business in line. Like, hey, what this is for people that have never heard of you and have no idea what this is. You need to be able to, high level have this so people can understand this and present it in a certain way. So that's that. But really for me, I've really been focusing on YouTube lately. And I maybe talked a little bit about this with you, but I am learning. So you have long form, like what we're doing right here. It's going to be an hour and a half. That's the long game. Not everyone, especially as you're growing and starting out, you can't expect to get thousands and thousands of hits on something like that. The shorts have been great for quick attention, quick marketing. Sometimes you get a good amount of subscribers off one short. Those I've noticed fizzle out though very quickly. There's a shelf life to them. Maybe 2-3 days, then they just stop. It's almost like the faucet was on, then it just stops. Where I'm at right now, I'm going for clips. I'm talking, and this goes for anyone creating content right now. I read a book. It's actually right here. I should plug him.
Yeah.
Brendan Kane's book. They were talking about YouTube. They said the sweet spot's between 7 and 8 minutes. If you can create whatever you're doing because of the watch time, getting people to commit to a 7 to 8 minute video or even take it down to 5-6 minute video is a lot easier, especially when they haven't heard of you, than getting someone to, hey, sit down and listen or watch this hour and a half. So that being said, I have also heard someone said that I won't watch a 2-hour podcast, but I'll watch 20 10-minute clips in a row. And I have fallen down that rabbit hole myself. I'm like, I'm not going to watch 45 minutes, but I'm like, this one's 6 minutes. And then you know how YouTube works. Hey, you like this? Watch this. And next thing you know, I'm 4 videos deep. So that's where I'm at right now, is how, because the short clips are great for Instagram and TikTok and quick, get people's attention quick, but it doesn't really sell the anatomy of the podcast, in my opinion, because I feel to really sink in and get a feel for a show, they need to listen to you and I going back and forth for 5-6 minutes to get a feel. So that's where I'm at with the clips.
You think like in the clip fashion or in these stories fashion, there's do you really get the sense of it? Like there'll be like a clip of, let's just say I'm watching a Neil deGrasse Tyson clip of some science thing going on, and it's like on shorts, like here's your 30-second clip. Like I know how he's going to be, but if let's say you didn't know him and you had this like clip and then you watch the full thing and it's just super boring. Just that one clip is the exciting, attention grabbing, educational moment. Like that, do you ever like think about that part of it? Because that's to me is like, I mean, it's good. I'm glad they clipped it so I didn't have to watch a 2-hour podcast, but does it give you the real sense of that podcast? Like that's what you're trying to say, right? Like to have a 2-3 minute or a 7-minute clip versus.
Yes, to get a feel for the show. And one thing I realized too, and I talk to Eric about this all the time, and then I just run across some random teenage kid that's cracked the YouTube algorithm and got like 4 million subscribers. But
one of those.
I had an acting teacher tell me one time, you can't make a rose bloom any faster than it wants to. And that's one thing that I've realized with this is you just have to put in the work. You have to try your best to market it and get it to new people.
Yeah.
But it's not going to happen overnight. And I think we were talking a little bit about this. Like I'm trying to, yes, it's possible that one of these clips could really take off. And funny enough, Eric and I, the clips we see take off the most are the controversial ones. Like we just mentioned, it was
Which one?
the one where Eric came on and just how the pandemic changed society. And you were talking just about the working class and oh my gosh, it just created a comment section of people. And I'm trying to stay out of, I get clickbait, but I also don't want to fall into the trap of, all right, I'm just trying to get, I want to stick with some integrity.
Because you might pull the crowd that you kind of don't want.
Exactly.
Do you want the troll crowd or no? You know, that sort of thing. I've seen that with some of the trailers that the low-hanging fruit was like I post up podcast trailers, like movie trailers, right? And so I've been noticing that the controversial topics of the podcast get the trolls. So a very mainstream version of that story is Raquel Levis, I don't know her last name. Raquel from Vanderpump Rules. The whole Tom Sandoval, Raquel thing, that drama. So she came out with a podcast, launched this January. I put up the short trailer of it, and trolls just inundated the YouTube comments. I'm like, this is not who I want. I want to foster good conversation, disagree, but foster that conversation. I want people to articulate that. Part of the reason why I like podcast criticism is the way they articulate why they like or dislike a podcast, right? When I've opened the door to user reviews on Great Pods early on. It's still there, but I'm the one moderating it. I read them. 50% of them are just like trolls, even on our site. And so I don't approve them. I respond back. I actually email them back and I ask them, can you articulate why you like this or dislike this podcast? Just by saying I hate them with a couple of exclamation points doesn't do anybody justice, not even yourself. So when I email them, they don't ever reply back.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you're just here for that clickbait and just want to piss people off. So I learned from that on YouTube as far as certain ones where I think there may be controversy. I'm going to limit or highly strict commenting and just delete all those trolls or not even approve them. I will moderate my space in that front. In that regard. So that's something I learned from YouTube. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, you make a brilliant point and you are right. I think more people should shift their thinking. There's a difference between, hey, I don't like something. This is why I don't like it. Let's discuss. And then someone that's just a keyboard warrior.
Yeah.
I really feel like they're just waiting for anything just to go off and attack. And I'm with you. If it's too far out there and, this doesn't do us any good.
We're all trying here. We're all trying to be better people at times. And it is frustrating. And it does something to your mental psyche when you read these troll comments as well. And it's just that sort of thing I'm trying to stave off a little bit. Like instant reactions are cool within your own personal space. But when you start typing out, let the subject digest a little bit, there's always going to be new follow-ups and new reports and new stuff, new information. So gather all that information, then make an articulate response. Like just by saying, what the hell? Like that's it? Like, no, there should be some time given for comment. This latest one, who trolled Amber Heard? Amber Heard's was controversial because of Johnny Depp, and there's trolls there. People are picking sides, right? And this podcast done by a really well respected podcast investigation publication, Tortoise Media. They've had the journalist, like, well done. I love his investigations. He's doing the investigation on this about the troll bots, literally just the troll bots on Twitter during this case. And just the trailer comes out. This is one of the things I wanted to avoid too. Just the trailer comes out, and then the trolls came out for pro and against. Like, it's just pro and cons. And I was like, well, what are you guys doing? It's just echo chambering each other, just hitting back and forth. You haven't even listened to the podcast. I got early episodes. I listened to the podcast. It's actually a really good podcast as far as structurally and his journalistic capabilities. But they're not going to listen. And so you defeat the entire purpose of this podcast being about the trolls and not Amber. Like, she's the reason why they're investigating, but it's not about the case itself. So yeah, you live and you learn.
Yeah, you bring up a brilliant concept with this, because I'm just spitballing here, but I just realized with what you're doing, it's kind of like Amazon reviews a little bit, right?
I mean, you can pick any review site. Yeah,
I know. I have gone more to reviews on Amazon now, and exactly, if I see someone that I can tell didn't even buy this thing, or like, you just don't take it seriously.
Yeah,
it loses credibility. Whereas when I look at something and someone gives me a really detailed reason for or against, and I'm realizing with the podcast, with what you're doing, it's a commitment. Podcasts are a commitment. And maybe someone, if like, man, I only have so much time, which podcast am I going to really listen to? Maybe they're going to go to Great Pods and they're going to check out the reviews. So it just dawned on me, for someone, not even for them to go talk about their experience with the podcast, but I really see the value in, like, hey, I only have so much time in a day. I like art, I like sports, whatever. But look how many podcasts are in this space. Let me read some reviews before I really commit to what I'm going to do here.
If you do your marketing, at some point somebody will end up on Great Pods, because that's how our Google SEO like really works. 80% of our traffic is on Google SEO, regardless of what algorithm changes they do up and down and all around. That the keywords are like podcast review in the podcast name. And if you haven't heard of the podcast, you're not coming to our site organically as a new user. It is a part of the marketing puzzle. And that towards the end, where people want to know more information. What do the critics say? What did the reviews say? Apple being a closed box, yeah, you can read some of them, but they're not really like helpful. They're not searchable. Spotify doesn't do reviews. You could say it's kind of like Amazon reviews, or YouTube comments, one or the other. But yeah, that's kind of like where we're trying to go with it. Yeah. At least that's on the review front.
Yeah. And there, I want to get more into the anatomy of Great Pods, but I got to say this one thing that you brought up. That's a good point. And I'm going to make this book of the episodes. I'm reading it right now. It's called Hatching Twitter. And it's the story of Twitter and how that all started. And I never knew the back story to all that. But, you were saying in a startup, it starts out, it was one thing. And then you guys discover something along the way. And they were in a different startup, which was actually in the podcasting space. It's called Odello, something like that.
I think I briefly recall.
Ev, one of the founders, was involved in it. He was the guy who backed it because he had sold Blogger previously. He had a successful start.
Google.
Yeah. And so he was working on that. And then this is where the story, all the drama, who came up with what comes into play. But they started on the side working on this. They didn't even have a name for it, the status thing. But then it just kept snowballing. And that turned into the thing. So you never know. And I think as an entrepreneur, a startup person, you have to be open at the same time too. It's great to have vision on where you're going, but if I do a podcast and this one topic just keeps blowing up, it'd probably be a good idea to go in on that.
Yeah.
I
try to figure that out, and that is like kind of perfect. I try to be have an open mind in regards to, is something shifting. If we have to pivot completely, But that is hard though. It is hard, like emotionally, to let go of something. I haven't gone that far yet. There are things I want to add to the ecosystem of Great Pods. If critics reviews, that's a minuscule thing. Like 5 years down the line, it's only like 5% of the site. I'm fine with that as long as it's still there. Like my baby's still there, that sort of thing. So I'm open mind on where it could go in the future.
Well, and Amazon started with books, just books, and now
Yeah.
it's still there, along with 10 million
Yeah,
or
yeah.
how many other things. So no, I
Yeah.
like that. I like having that vision, but being open to just growing it. And with the name, I think of the brand, just Great Pods. And I mean, you can do anything.
I sure hope so. Yeah.
anything
I can open up a
podcast.
coffee shop too if I wanted to. Great Pods for coffee pods or something. That's,
Have podcast mics set up. People just
With coffee.
podcast from their,
Yeah,
you got some ideas
there's a whole lot of vision into it, but it doesn't happen until people start visiting.
Yeah.
People start using it. I can look at the data and see what connects and doesn't connect with users, and then can improve from there. As of right now, if we get into the depressing part of it,
I was going to, so I was going to transition.
go for it.
So, because I know we're going to talk about the middle. So you connect with your engineer, you build Great Pods, you get through these beginning stages. Now what happens? Now that you have it up, it's going, it's functional. Where are we at right now with it?
Yeah, and I want to give credit to the team that helped me build it. Seb, who is my buddy, he was the co-founder at the time and helped me build that initial run, and then he recruited another like student, Chris. He helped kind of implement a lot of the designs from my buddy Brian, who helped me like put all the pieces of paper and crap I just drew up on paper and made it nice and beautiful. So the first site you would see is that not only Excel, but like an Airtable. We started using Airtable after Google Spreadsheets, and that first iteration was like these boxes, and just like it was just an ugly site. Then my design buddy, helped me kind of formulate all my favorite needs and what do I want in the world? What's your favorite album and all that stuff? So he put that together, and then Chris was able to implement it, and then Seb was able to kind of make sure if there was any problems going on that everything was fixed. So that was the initial team that helped build what we have today. What was your?
And I'm sorry, I actually came up with a question before we get to the middle. So once you got it functional and ready to go, what could you go a little bit into those beginning stages of getting out there with it?
Yeah,
things you were doing.
My pleasure, and of course, I know that this is a podcast, so I'm just gonna lay it all out, and then you can obviously cut this shit up, whatever is like.
I'd love to keep as much in as we can too, because I think it's very important. Like we were saying, and we're going to get to, startup life seems glamorous when you see, so-and-so sold for blah, 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 or millions over here, and it's cool and it's trendy, but the actual work and grind, I think it's very important for people to understand.
Now, these guys are up in the Bay Area and I'm down here. So there's quite a bit of Zoom calls going on, listening to experts, listening to a lot of podcasts, reading articles on where can we go with it. So I'd say the first 6 months is building that initial shitty site. But at least it's there. What were we talking about? Like building the plane while flying it. So it's about just launching it. Just put it out there in the universe, launch the site, and then iterate on that, right? Build it as you go. So in that process of the first 6 months, at some point in the middle, I was like, wait, we're not really getting any Google or something. We need to add we need analytics added. From that, it snowballed to, we need SEO tags. We need meta tags. So I looked up the basics for that, learning how to run the basics with that, as well as just kind of site features, that we needed to implement, some basics that we didn't have before. Get those basics in the first 6 months, learn a little bit of that. Let Seb, my engineer, and Chris know, and they were able to implement it. You come up with your own meta tags on your website, so that way Google can search for it. So those are in the first 6 to 8 months. of it. Adding the analytics was extremely important. Google Analytics, or what we use, another freemium analytics site called Amplitude, implemented the keywords and some taggings in there. And I'm very basic in the data analytics. Like, if you have a dashboard ready for me, that's awesome. Amplitude, you kind of have to dive deep a little bit. You got to ask the questions and funnel your way into an answer. So I kind of ask the basic questions, and Amplitude kind of helps me out with that. And then we started seeing, one user a day, then 2 users a day. This is early 2021, I want to say. So January, February, you start seeing just like 1 or 2 a day. Now, granted, it could have been me, the 1 or 2 a day, just hitting refresh. But then we learned also to block your own IP. Like, so it's like, hey, what's your IP in San Francisco? Okay, block. But because I would see Oakland, I would see San Francisco, and it's just like 2 users. I'm like, what is your IP? We need to block that from Google Analytics so it doesn't get picked up, because otherwise we just get 100 clicks from there a day.
I'm smiling because I realized a lot of my views on YouTube are probably me checking videos, but no, that's a good point.
And then there's duplicates also. You can
Yeah.
single out the uniques to duplicates and all that sort of stuff. And, but it would start being that 1 to 2 to 3. But when it hit 5, I was like, that's not me. That's not any of us. Like, 5 people. This is amazing. I was mind blown by 5 people. Then you get 10. We're like, what's going on? Okay, cool. And it started hovering around like 15 to 20 and just kind of there. I'm like, this is organic SEO, right? But I also learned that when you're doing an early website on Google, this is also a lesson now. When you do an early site on Google, it takes months, maybe a year, before they really recognize you as a legitimate site or index a lot of your pages, or if you get to normal size, the first 3 pages, I don't know. So what I was noticing, there's also another tool called Google Search Console, which Google obviously allows, and you're able to see your keywords. What are people searching for that they show your page? And you can also see the click-through rate on that. So you have the impressions and the click-through rate. So I started seeing that as well. And you get to see which pages that you've created on your site does Google index. And it was like 99, 98%, don't quote me on the percentage, but it's like that high percentage that the podcast pages I was adding reviews for, they weren't being indexed by Google at all. And we had a site index. We did all the basics, like I said, like Google SEO, but also a site index. So that way Google could recognize that, hey, this is a proper site. Let's start crawling it and adding it to Google. That helped also, but it still wasn't indexing podcast pages right away. It would take like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I'm like, no, if a podcast is popular now, people want to search for it now. It should be indexed within 24 hours. It shouldn't wait 2 or 3 weeks. So I saw that problem. Again, using all these tools, you notice these problems. And you're like, okay, how do we fix this? At that point, a miracle needed to happen, and a miracle happened. About, was it 2020? I mean, I get dates a little mixed up. I got to figure out if it was 21 or 22. But there was a huge spike in traffic. And for me, a huge spike in traffic is going from like 100 to 1,500 in one day, 1,500 unique visitors in one day. And so I scrambled. I was thinking there's a bot, maybe a Google bot or something is just crawling too much. There's something wrong with the website. I freaked out. I was nervous, excited, but I was also freaking out that something's wrong with the site. So I'm calling Seb up. I'm like, what is happening? We need to figure this out. He couldn't figure out, or he's like, after his day job, he can go to Google Analytics. I was like, I can't wait for this. It's like 2:00 in the afternoon. I don't even know what's hitting, what's not. So I go into Google Analytics, and you're able to see the referral traffic. You have to dig deep a little bit. I had to learn that as well, where the referral traffic is coming from. And it ends up, it's coming from Reddit. And I'm like, oh my God, Reddit? There's a link on Reddit. Somebody posted a link on Reddit. Where is that coming from? It didn't tell me the exact address of like which subreddit it was coming from. It just said Reddit. I'm like, it's Reddit. How am I supposed to deep dive into Reddit? somehow magically, I'm trying to think if there was another keyword in the address that I was able to like search on Reddit. And once I found it, it was in a popular subreddit, and they were talking about an election in the East Coast North Carolina election. And Serial had a podcast. Serial and New York Times. There was a podcast called the Improvement Association about certain elections in New York, not New York, North Carolina. That whoever found it found Googled Improvement Association podcast, used the Great Pods link. So they found it. It was indexed on Google. And so they were able to, they found it there, and they linked it as like, oh, this was a great podcast from about the elections and all the stuff that's going on over there. They posted that, boom, shot up. That also, FYI to viewers and listeners, is that it also showed that Google, we were a legitimate site. Our site authority went up because Reddit, who has super site authority, there was a link of our site on there. After that, within the next weekend, all of our podcast pages started getting indexed from Google automatically within 24 hours. They just started indexing all of them.
Just from that one spike.
Just from that one. And it was super, first of all, I was super patting myself on the back for figuring this shit out. I was like, that's so great when you're able to do it on your own, right?
I was going to say, you've received an entirely different education through this process, learning the ins and the outs of the web, really, the Google.
It can get complicated.
Yeah, it's not easy.
YouTube, I'm watching, or not to get tangentially, but like I'm watching YouTube videos right now on how to use ChatGPT to help me kind of code or figure out some summaries, and just to assist me as a tool, not creating whole things out of blank, but just to assist me. I'm watching these YouTube videos. And I'm like, oh my God, this is way too complicated. Like, I need to figure it out on my own again. And I don't want to. Like, I want to make sure I'm learning something like that technical. Like, I want to learn kind of a step-by-step approach on it. But we'll see how that ends up. By the time the conference rolls around, we'll talk, and I'll be like, I will probably say it didn't work out for me, or it did work out for me on that front.
On that front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so learning on the fly, hits and misses. I did read some articles on certain things I needed to get, like the meta tags. But nobody told me that, once the site authority hits, that it'll index all of your, Google is going to be like, hey, you're good. Well, let's get to it. I don't have to manually index them all. I would manually index quite a bit. And so I didn't have to do that anymore. To this day, I don't have to do it anymore.
And that's a great example of that work that you had to put in, and that foundation you had to lay to get to that point, to get to that tripwire, right?
It's the foundation. You have to build the foundation.
There's no shortcut. You have to lay that foundation. And my question, as you're taking me through this journey, now, are you out on the scene with this, like going out, telling people about it? Or are you guys just really, for these first beginning stages, doing it all?
That's something that I kind of didn't know what to do with. I have the newsletter. I have a weekly newsletter at greatpods.co. And what I would do with that is I would put some of my business learnings of the startup and the podcast space that I'm doing. I would put that into the newsletter. So I did mention like the Reddit post within the newsletter as well. But as far as how to PR it, I'm kind of like other podcasters. I don't have a PR kit. I don't have a marketing plan, so to speak, on that front, because I'm too heavy in the weeds of building this thing out. Do I want that stuff? Do I want to mention to the LA Times that, hey, there's a new podcast website that's out, that's like the Rotten Tomatoes for podcast? Yes. Should I have done it early on, or should I do that when I make my next iteration? And now that the past is the past, I can't go back then. I do want to start the marketing process now-ish, building out that marketing team, like guerrilla marketing. I want to try those things out. It's just part of the startup process, testing and iterating. I want to start doing that, as well as the next iteration of the site. When that next iteration of the site is out, I will try our best to publish it wherever we can publish it, whether it's newspapers, digital publications. So that way the masses are known about it. And that's part of the organic marketing. $0, but earned marketing versus doing paid marketing.
Right.
Everything we've done so far has been organic, unpaid marketing. It's just
I love it, man.
super chill.
It's where the
on
work
that front.
comes in.
Yeah.
And as we're just talking, we live in LA. I would think LA would want to promote an LA based startup.
You got some tips for me?
I'm figuring it out too.
I'm all ears too.
Well, I know, just spitballing with you. And this is why I just love startup talk, because I'm an idea guy too. So I just like, Rotten Tomatoes, movies, Hollywood, great pods, podcasts. We live in Hollywood.
Entertainment media.
Entertainment
right? Yeah.
media. This is where, they're building podcast studio. They already have. I don't even know where they all are, but YouTube Studios isn't far from here. I mean, this is... it makes sense that this would be birthed out of LA, but I love that you have that Silicon Valley background, but you brought it back here. Did you grow up in LA?
Yeah, I was born and raised in LA, but
Okay.
I wanted to be in entertainment, and I tried to figure out my way through entertainment and media and tech as well. So finding that media, the West Coast is perfect for it. You got media and entertainment, you got tech. So that sort of back and forth that I did was kind of beneficial to me and what I wanted to do, and that to make it possible. There's people that I've encountered. I'm like, how are you doing this? If you can do it, I can do it. Now it is granted more difficult, but yeah, I'm doing it. I'm trying my best, and that's all we can do is try our best and try to achieve it. If it fails, it fails. But now I don't have that regret.
Absolutely. I'm the same mentality. And I think, me personally, really play off that, hey, local LA guy, went to Silicon Valley, got the experience, came back here to Los Angeles and created great pods. I mean, I would think, have you been on any news stations or anything like that?
I've done nothing of the sort.
I mean,
this is you're big time. This is big time for me right now. This is big time for me.
No, I love it. Because what I love about your story is, and I think what one thing I hope people take from this, especially in a place like Los Angeles, it's a double-edged sword, right? In LA, anyone can come to LA to be anything. At the same time, anyone can come to LA to be anything, and they may not be that. You've done the work. I've gone to your website. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful site. It's functional. It works great. It's only going to get better and better and better. But it took you, 2020,
fall of 2020.
You're 4 years in.
So it's almost 4 years.
You're 4 years in, and you're now just considering, now let me go on some new things, which I think is a good thing. We have a saying in the acting community, like everyone wants to come to LA and be a Hollywood star. But people who really do it will tell you, well, you got to go to acting school and you got to get really, 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 really good.
Yeah.
You took the time to get really, 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 really good. Now that you've put in that work, now it's like, okay, now it makes sense. I need to see if I can get some PR over here, some of the local LA, see if they'll support an LA local here. I really see the path that you can really do that with.
It's hard for me to take compliments, but I'll say thank you for that compliment.
Sure. I mean that as the highest compliment.
I don't think because in my head I'm thinking like, no, we're not good enough. We're not good enough yet. We're not even
You're not
there
good.
yet.
You're great.
We're great. Why be good when you can be great?
Yeah.
Like we're not
Greatpods.co.
It's already working. It's working. You got to say it, dude.
That's part of your tagline, man. Like,
yeah, why be good when you be great?
When you go on I see it for you. You're going to be sitting down with these news people. They're going to be asking. It's going to be shorter segments, but podcast is mainstream and it is now. This needs to be out there. People need to know about this. And when you go on and whatever people say about TV, well, TV's dead. It's not dead. There's still a lot of people that tune in to the news.
Tune in.
Yeah.
Nice callback.
There's so many
unintentional callback.
But I really see it. You've built the thing, and now it's like now it's time for them. If you build it, they will come, but they need to know about it. People need to know to come.
Here's Orville and Wilbur, and they're just in their plane right now. They're about this high off the ground, right? That's where we're at. Where I want to go is up here.
Yeah.
They're down here still. We're still trying. Yeah, it's launched.
But how many
Let's go.
people don't get off the ground?
Yeah, exactly.
You know more than anybody. And I'm curious to talk more. We can talk on and off camera about Silicon Valley, but how many things have you seen? Everyone has great ideas, but how it's the execution.
And I like I said, I don't think I'm there, or well, nobody's really perfect. That's the one thing I also learned is like those founders and CEOs, they're not perfect. They're failing also all over the place. We just hear the good stuff or the really bad stuff from that. We don't see or hear about the in-betweens of what you're asking me about. That's the stuff that I like too.
Yeah.
Is the juice. Where are you struggling that you also came up with a solution that worked or didn't work? So when I hear like Spotify or some other app is getting rid of a feature, there's a perfectly good reason behind it. At TuneIn, that happened all the time too. We build something for 4 months, 1 quarter, launch it, and see that a certain group is not it's not growing a special feature or whatever, and to say, okay, well, we can't maintain that. It's going to cost too much to maintain if nobody's using it. So cut that feature out. There's things like that have happened that I've read about that people, oh, I love that feature. I was a customer support rep at TuneIn in my early days. I'd see that all the time, but that's just 2 people, right? Versus 10 million people that use the app every day. And if we're seeing people delete the app or get rid of the app en masse because of that one feature, and only 2 people liked it, well, what are we going to do? We're going to take it out. So we see these changes throughout. Some of them are very business and analytical. You don't think Spotify has analytics all over their app and website? No, of course they do. They have every inch covered of what people are using and where they're using it and how they're using it, if they're using it. And that's how they keep iterating upon certain features or delete certain features. So that was an important like learning for me, especially like reading how to decipher some of these articles a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, you are correct. There's a reason why we think, I mean, bottom line too, with a lot of these places. And unfortunately, jobs come with that a lot of times too. But
yeah, back to the subject of coming to LA to LA for entertainment stuff. Like, yeah, I loved that part. That part was, yeah, I'm in Hollywood, man. Let's make this thing big. One of my side goals is like making LA the podcast capital of the world. It's a toss up between, New York or LA or Austin, maybe in the US at least. Granted, podcasts you can record from anywhere. But as far as like a hub of podcasts, I would love LA. I want to be part of making LA the podcast capital of the world.
See this right here. And this is awesome, man, because right here, I'm seeing your pitch form right in front of my eyes for the PR part of it. LA will get behind you. Hey, I'm from LA. I love this city. I want to make LA the podcast capital of the world. LA will get behind that. We've loved, I say we have been here 6 years, but I live here though. I mean, how long have you been here?
6 years.
6 years, yeah. So we're past the like, oh, they came for 2 or 3 years. I'm not vetted to like the 10-year mark, but
yeah.
But LA wants to win. I think you going and getting this message out there, and like as we're talking too, I think I'm just realizing with your brand, there should be eventually will be a Great Pods podcast. You don't even have to be the host.
I've already tried that. Speaking of testing and iterating, I've tried that. But it's when you're solopreneuring it out, it's very difficult to. I mean, you guys know, like also like it's a 2-man operation. It is still time consuming, mentally, emotionally, and all that good stuff to do all these many hats, as well as doing the social media aspect of it as well. That part has been great. That is funny because I'm doing a podcast website. You would think it's natural for me to have a podcast, which I thought so myself. But one of the things that Sebastian has, like, we work on the low-hanging fruit. Yeah. Low-hanging fruit. What is the easiest thing that you can rinse and repeat amongst different platforms that you're already doing? And so one of those things was the newsletter. I was always recommending 3 podcasts a week. writing up. I listen to them. I put the reviews in there, and then give my own opinion. That was the low hanging fruit. Why don't, if I only have like 1,000 subscribers here, I'll put it into a podcast, and that'll be another 100, 150 people that are listening. And so you're just adding viewers or listeners or subscribers from from different areas. However, that part of reading it and recording it and trying to be a little more excited on the microphone about the newsletter. I'm sorry. Let me just scratch that for a second. I was taking the newsletter and making that into a podcast.
Okay.
So that's the low-hanging fruit. I already created the newsletter. I already have the script for it from the newsletter. Let me just read that in audio format and put that into a podcast. That to me was I tested it for 4 episodes. I did the 4-episode marker. And I was like, this is way too long for me to consume while I'm trying to do some business development, trying to pitch, trying to take some courses, YouTube, everything we're trying to do with the non-engineering side of the site. It was too time consuming. So I kind of cut it for now. It's been a little over a year for now. I was like, and just for now, it's been over a year. But I want to recreate it again eventually, but that requires a bigger team. So that way I have time to do that, or hand it off to a team member to do.
Exactly. You don't even have to be the one to do it, or maybe you come on sometimes. No, exactly. And it really, you will be, I'm saying you will be
put it out there in the universe.
Like, I see it. You will be the authority for podcasts. When people want to know about podcasts, they're going to go to greatpods.co.
He said it, not me. But that's something I want. That's another thing I want. These are all wants, needs, is that the site itself becomes the podcast entertainment site.
Yeah. Like when someone, for example, is, I'll throw myself out there. I'm telling someone at a podcast or a networking event, I do a podcast. It's called the Sam Dever Podcast. And they go, all right, let me go to greatpods.co and see if this dude.
Yeah.
And maybe they go, oh, he actually has some reviews. And you know what I liked? I should have saved it for reference. There was some really great, and it makes sense that you moderate that. There were some very fair reviews. I was looking at podcasts. Some had 5 stars. Some had like 2.5. And the people were very honest. They would say some good things, but but this, and this, but that's needed. Because like I said at the beginning, podcasts, it's not like 5-minute things we're dealing with. We're listening to 45, 30 minutes, 30 to an hour and a half usually worth of content. And I have to throw this in there because as we're getting into, I think, the middle portion now of where everything's at. I totally relate to you when you said you're trying to do this. You're trying to do this. I mean, I run the social media for this. That in itself, and I'm doing simple stuff. I'm not doing posting multiple times a day. I'm just trying to let me get a few posts in a week on the multiple platforms. It takes time. Like 1 hour to an hour and a half. Once you've posted, you've tagged, you've done this, you've done that. And that's just one piece of the pie. That's not including going through editing and then Eric and I going back and forth and cutting up clips.
It's exhausting, man.
It's exhausting. Yes.
The Instagram Reels part of it, early on, like when I started posting some pictures and some Reels, they were only picked up really when I was tagging the other person or they added them in. But in the last 2 weeks, I barely have posted. But when I did post something, it's like, here's 6 likes, 100 views. I was like, I'm not going to reach the masses with this. If I'm trying to be a mainstream site for the masses or a brand, like I'm not going to be reaching it with that. Even though they say post, every day or every other day or something like that. I'm sorry, I don't have the time. Now I got a lot of content from this festival last week, purposely thinking I'm only going to do this under 10 seconds. I'm only interviewing for 10 seconds. That's all I want from you, whoever you were. So that way it's easier on me to edit, whether it's vertical video or on Adobe Premiere on my PC. So I just got the coverage from my buddy who helped me out with the filming. And this week I'll be going in and starting to edit. After I finish my newsletter for the week, I'll be going in and editing these short interviews. And I got like 30 of them. So it's about like, I'm probably do 3 a piece, 3 interviews per post, piece them all together because they're super short. was like, okay, yeah, you have 15 seconds, you'll know 3 people and what they do in the audio space. That's kind of my goal, is to peel back that layer of the industry when I go to these types of events. The side, not the side note, what's the right word? I always forget these words. What's the word for when there's an accidental kind of relationship? You're like, oh, I didn't know that was there. What's that? Not side piece. Not side piece. It's not side note, but it's in relations. Like I'm doing
Side effect.
Side effect. Perfect. Thank you.
There we go.
Sheesh. I need to read more books. Okay, but yeah, thank you.
You're too busy building great pods.
Yeah.
There'll be time for books later.
The side effect of interviewing these people is I'm networking with them, right? They know who you are. Because in my introduction to getting them to be on camera is that they're getting to know who I am and what I'm building. So when I do the Rotten Tomatoes podcast, their eyes light up. I'm like, I got you, and you're going to be doing the interview. And they're like, oh, I really like that idea. And I'll be like, the idea is actually live, so you can go to it. Yeah, and so there's that side effect of networking that happens along the way.
Yeah, or I guess consequential things. Consequence can be neither good nor bad. It's just what happens when you take action. It's so funny. We're serendipitous that we're talking because this Twitter book. Have you reached out to like entertainment in Hollywood, like influencers, celebrities? Because Twitter, that's really how they caught steam pretty fast. I mean, they were getting known in Silicon Valley, the who's who of tech, but then like Ashton Kutcher and some celebs caught on, and then they start talking about it. So I just think it would take, once you get a few of those really big podcast fans out there.
So here's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
The problem, I mean, that's what we do. We have a problem. We try to have a solution for it. That's Great Pods. So the problem, what I have now, currently, which I'm looking to resolve with a new engineer soon, is to create logins, registration, basic registration. How we know basic registration left. We don't have that on Great Pods. The idea behind the first iteration of Great Pods, because that could get complicated. You need database information, save privacy notices, things like that when you have storing people's information. So with my buddy's iteration was like, no, we're going to throw everything else out there, everything that we don't need from registering. But we're at a point now, like you mentioned, potentially with the influencers, people in general, to save their podcasts, create a registration page. So I get to know more about you on the anonymous analytics, right? Part of it, but also where somebody like a celebrity, let's just say a celebrity pops in and they sign up and they like the site, but then they're able to use NBA and they're able to advocate for it, organically advocate for it on Twitter and Instagram, where I love this new website. It's called Great Pods, blah, blah, blah. Check it out without having me to pay for it. So I want to try to do everything as organic as much as possible up into the wall, and then start doing paid stuff. But I'd love to find out if they're fans of the site, like yourself, know if there's fans, because that's easy. These are easy advocates of the site. And that's a lot of startups. Find your fans, find your super fans, because they're the ones that are going to help you go from 1 to 4, and then you can get the rest from 4 to 6. That startup, there's a startup curve. You can Google it, but there's that startup curve, and it's like slow build up, and then there's super fans, and then they're going to push for that wherever. Hey, sign up. That sort of slope.
Have you ever read Tribes by Seth Godin?
No, I think does it have the? No, I haven't. Just FYI, I don't read many books. I read minds. So
you're building great pods. Hey, and this has been a topic on here. We realize that books are great, but you can also spend too much time in books. You got to take action. You've taken action. So
and doesn't mean I haven't read. I have listened to Seth Godin's podcast.
Right.
Now I'm going through a lot of different podcasts, but I've knowing about Seth Godin and reading excerpts. I have time for excerpts.
Sure.
It's just like clipping for me.
Yeah, that's true.
In that front, so I can digest what I need to digest from whatever he's written or any other author has written.
Well, it reminded me when you're talking about in Tribes, he talks about that idea of super fans. Say you're a musician. I don't know if he put an exact number on it, but say you just need 1,000 loyal fans to have a career. You don't need millions, because those 1,000 loyal fans, they're going to go to every concert. They're going to buy every t-shirt you come out with. They're going to tell everyone, their family and friends about you. They're going to share every time you post something.
He might have started. I think maybe he started that in the Valley of how to coin that.
He probably
that phase,
did. He's
that
written
phase
some
of it.
really good ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, that idea of, I think especially now in social media culture where we're like, oh, this person has millions and millions of followers. Would you rather have 10 million quote unquote followers who don't engage, who don't share, it's just a number, or would you rather have 250,000, I'm using really big numbers, 250,000 like super people who are super engaged. They come to your site all the time. They're constantly, I'd rather have and same with the podcast. What do I want? To just hit big numbers, but people really don't listen. They don't comment. Or would I rather just create this, I didn't want to use the word cult, but tribe of people who are going to, every single time a new podcast comes out, yeah, I'm listening, I'm commenting,
Dude,
I'm sharing.
I want both.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look back at we're saying Rotten Tomatoes a lot, but if you look back at a lot of these sites that we go to for reviews, whether it's IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, things of that sort, they have a place for the super fan, but they have also a place for the casual fan, right? The 10 million of the world, and then the 250,000, right? If you're a hardcore fan, you'll go in, you create the registration, you will comment on everything. That's great and all. If I just want to look up a video game review, I just go to Metacritic. I'm not commenting on. I'm just looking at what is this, the grade, the score, the review. Done. I'm buying it or I'm not buying it. One or the other. So I get my information and I get out. I like both because I'll go into Rotten Tomatoes, same mentality. Oh, what did Loki get? I will go in, read that review, and I don't have a registration with Rotten Tomatoes, right? I'm a casual fan of Rotten Tomatoes, but then I'm a super fan of, let's say, Letterboxd. I have a login, and that's still in the movies industry, right? I'll have a login and I'll comment on there. I wouldn't say I'm a super fan, but I'm like a moderate fan, right? So now I'm actually taking action. So there's these types of worlds that certain sites exist for, and they're still kind of open to the masses as well. So you can be that. For, if anything, that's on that level. On a monetization level, you want everybody. I think you would want everybody because that super fan is going to go a little extra. You make a couple of more bucks on Google AdSense or subscription level business. And then the 10 million on Google AdSense, that's great. That's still great money. Wow. Even if you just come in for 2 minutes, you read some reviews and you dip out. Like, I want you coming back at least once a month. Like, come back monthly. You don't have to come back every day. Come back once a month. Maybe you'll find something then, just keep on cycling through. I still won't lose you as a user, but you come in once a month.
Yeah. If I had the book in front, so basically the super fans get the fire going.
Yeah.
But then once the fire gets going, there's names for that. He names Seth names for those stages. But yeah, yes. No, I see what you're saying.
I think he's probably, if we're correct about like what we're talking about, is that curve that was going in.
Yes.
And there's like sections. So there's like 1, 2, 3, like 4 sections of it. And so we're talking about like that super fan. But yeah, once you grow up there, and then it dips down as like late adopters, early adopters. It was early adopters.
We solved the code. Greatpods.co. So
why did it take that long? Yeah, no, that was the thing. Early adopters.
Yeah,
that's the phrase being used for it. Now, I don't know who's an early adopter. That's my problem. And so by creating registration, at least I get to start to see some early adopters. If those who do come back, you do have some retention. You get on Google Analytics does tell you like the day 0, day 1, day 2, day 30 users that are coming back or not. That to me is quite low. And so in order to help fix that, registration, getting to know the person, if they're able to register, then I know more information and do some retention tactics like sending them an email, and maybe they are signed up to the newsletter. Maybe that's better for my newsletter, and attracting them and having them come back and re-engage with them. Yeah. Okay. And then obviously like asking them what their needs are. I've solved partially what my needs are. Well, now it's a big part of creating a startup and making it accessible is actually going through user discovery and asking users like yourself, even though you're a podcast, but users like yourself from this site, what are your needs and wants? Now, I don't, even if you give a suggestion, one of the hardest things is also not listening to your suggestion, just listening to your problem. Let us figure out how to solve it on the back end. You're like, hey, you should create something like that. Now, that's a great feature ask, but that doesn't solve the problem at hand. Because I could spend 6 months building a feature and then you may show up in once and never use it again. That's a big problem in startup space, wasting time in that sense. We got to figure out how to solve it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Building something that you may think is cool, but then, yeah, if it's not being used or, the functionality's not being
Yeah. I
utilized.
could be suggesting things a lot for you and you'd be like, yeah, that's cool. Like it may be, okay, here's the technical, maybe move the lighting there. You can do that and that's fine and well. But if I suggest something else to you, and you listen and it actually gives you negative comments or maybe your numbers get zero. Well, what the hell? Like, no, you shouldn't. You should take my learnings or suggestions or what's my problem,
Right.
and then you solve it. That's your entrepreneurial sense. That's your entrepreneurial training. Is you solve it, figure it out, and trying to ignore those suggestions.
Okay.
All in
Yeah,
all.
no, that makes sense.
What happens is, so here's the story of my co-founder Seb. He when it was something exciting, a feature I wanted, I was like, I need this, and this, and this, and this. He's like, calm down, chill out. What's one or two things, 3 things, whatever. Go do some research. Go build some data around it. Build a case for it. I have to build a case. So I had to build a case for whatever feature for my site. But he was going to build it. So he's like, I don't want to waste his time. So I totally got that understood. I wasn't going to build it off of a no code side. I had an actual engineer. So I had to build my case for certain things to be built during that time frame. So you got to build your case for those features. If I tell you about a feature, oh, you should do this. Well, I should be able to build a case for it in order to convince you to do it. Like pull some data, pull some articles. You should try this out. It shouldn't just be me, right? I could just pull it out of my ass and like, okay, so
Right.
give me some data behind it. A little bit, just give me something.
Yeah. And I think as a fellow visionary creative, because I'm like you, I see things and then I'm like, all right, we're going to do this. And then you talk to the technical end, whether it was a video I wanted to produce back in the day or now I want it to be this. And then, whoever's producing it may say, okay, I see what you're trying to do, but this is how we're going to do it. And a lot of times I think just having that openness of trust too, with whoever's helping you build or produce something, trusting them to do their job and having that ability to let go. And then when you see it, oh, okay, that may not have been like exactly what I thought. And sometimes it can turn out even better than what you thought it would
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. It's that collaboration.
Collaboration.
Because they're also creative and they may not call them creative, but they are creative because
Absolutely.
they're interpreting it in different ways. So that's being creative. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're getting closer to the end here. And I was thinking maybe in the next 10 minutes or so.
Wait, did we talk about the middle?
we talked about the middle at the end. But I think all of that has led us to this final section here. So right now you'd be considered, you're in the middle. You've done the groundwork. You're not just an idea. No, you are functional. You are live. People are using it. Podcasts are on it. Tell me about that journey now, where you're at in the middle, and where do you go from here?
I just want to say it is the last 6 months. I would say they've been up and down. So they've been why I rub my eyes for. I feel like I was acting right now. I was like, ugh. No, but it is. I may be smiling, but it's like internally hiding the depression part of it. It's been spikes and there's been lows of lows, right? Part of the reason is the team. Part of the reason is the algorithms, Google algorithms. But then there's been a silver lining behind that. So to add some context to it, my co-founder, now I'm a founder, but he had left to start a family. And he lives in San Francisco, has San Francisco mortgage. So we're a bootstrap startup. He can't afford to do all of that while working for Great Pods. So that kind of dream of that has been put on hold for him while he works. And he's an engineer, so he's fine. He's happy now. And everything. So that part of the team where we made subtle improvements with the iterations with the site stopped. And Chris got a job at an engineering company I'm not going to mention, but a well-off one, and happy for him. And what I'd like to say is that, claim to fame is that we trained him up to get that job. So I'm just saying that much. But so that happened on the team level. So I didn't have any engineering assist on that. No, they're still around for emergencies. Like we had an emergency like a month ago, and they were able to assist. And they kind of guided me along the way to log into some of the features, and I kind of actually did fix it. And now I actually know where to hit the reset button when something like this happens. So a little bit of training actually happened. So that's a little bit of silver lining there. But any deep cuts, I'll need to call them up like, hey, I need help. So they're around when they need to be on that level. But that's the depressing part last year. And then October, Google, they never announced when they make changes to the algorithm, but our numbers shot down. I don't know the percentage, but they're starting to go down. And I was trying to do some research. I follow a couple of tech newsletters, and one of them was mentioning a bunch of publishers were seeing negative effects of the latest Google algorithmic change starting in October. So I was putting those types to one and one together, 2 and 2 together, 3 and 3 together, whichever the phrase is. But I started putting that together, and some of them that were quoted are aggregators themselves. And so as a site currently, we're an aggregator. We have a blog, that's the original content part of it, but that was hurting me starting in October. And as we get around, and then it started plateau and it's kind of dips a little bit. Now we're just we're fine. We're kind of there. But it hasn't shot up. It's like when we're on the plane and we hit the ground again, but we're still moving, but we're ready to take off again. That's where the site is. It's kind of touching the ground a little bit. We haven't really taken off. So that's kind of a little depressing that's occurring, because I thought we had really good momentum. I don't know if it was my mistake about capitalizing on that momentum. I didn't know what to do with that momentum. So there's stuff that I'm trying to learn and trying to figure out. It's a good problem now to try to figure out. The big silver lining though, that got me out of the funk was YouTube. A lot of things have been mentioned about you putting your podcast on YouTube, and that's good and all. But for me, I don't have a podcast, so what do I put up there? Earlier, I mentioned the conversation about trailers. I'd get permission to post some trailers up from far and wide, big name, small name publishers, post up the trailer. And I've been doing that for over a year. I just would do it because I started to notice that it drives traffic to the site. The advantage of YouTube, do you have a site, by the way?
Website?
Yeah, official
Yes.
website?
Yes.
Okay. And you link to your official website from your description in YouTube?
Yes, correct.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you're already doing way more than I did
That
before.
and Instagram. The website's the first main website, but then you can put other links.
Yeah.
And I put Instagram as the next
Of course,
one.
no,
Yeah.
as you should. So that's something I was learning over the course of the year. 10% of our traffic started to come from YouTube. I'm like, why is it coming from YouTube? And as I started learning about YouTube being the number 2 search engine, they are a search engine, and they work hand in hand with Google.
Google owns them.
And it's like, well, what was I missing here? Why didn't I? It's one of those things. It's like it already existed. It's just that it wasn't in front of my face of not using. And I would notice that where I didn't rank highly, the original podcast page on Great Pods would be page 2 or 3. The YouTube trailer that I had posted would be on the first page in the top fold of Google. And so I started getting increased subscription, YouTube subscribers and views on YouTube. that to me is equally as valuable as much as visitors of the website, because there's 200,000 views here and I get 200,000 views, 200,000 visits on the website. That's good numbers all around for any types of monetization. So that got me out of the funk, because my subscribers at that moment in time when I checked last was over 7,000. I was like, where did you guys come from? What is going on? So now I'm learning a new analytics platform, which is YouTube Analytics, which is far more robust than Google Analytics, the way it's set up for us right now. But YouTube Analytics is like self-serve. They're already set up. You start posting videos and you start learning YouTube Analytics. Hence why they're like, I look at YouTube keywords, I look at YouTube Analytics, I look at the subscribers as well. And I started seeing traffic bumping up on YouTube for Great Pods and the trailers I post up. However, that was the silver lining, got me out of my funk. I'm super excited and stoked. Part of my strategy now is building out YouTube content, original content. One of the reasons being that YouTube does not let you monetize content if it's not yours. And so I'm perfectly fine with that. You know, this is somebody else's, a publisher's trailer they gave me permission for, but I'm not monetizing that. Going to these conferences, videotaping people, maybe coming up with my own recommendations, reading the newsletter, we talked about making it a podcast, doing it on screen instead, figuring that out. I'm at the stage this year of figuring out how my YouTube strategy would go. It is different from yours, but it's along the same lines of learning YouTube and what works for either of us. We talked earlier about certain the trolling comments. That's the same thing. I'm learning that as I go along. Yeah, and another piece of great news from that got me out of my funk was that seeing that some of these trailers were being embedded on certain blogs or websites, and so that would increase the views on YouTube because they're embedded on these popular sites, and there in turn I'd get 10% of that traffic that people who clicked on the description would click over to Great Pods. So anyway, so where I'm at right now is I'm learning more about YouTube, producing some original content. Hopefully I can edit it up in a faster fashion, but it's really quite slow in editing. We already know about the editing process and putting stuff together, and learning from the original content part of it. I've learned a lot by the trailers. There's still much to learn about it, but if I can piece together some sort of entertainment, I'd like to piece together like an entertainment style show, less than 5 minutes. I think we talked about some sweet spots, but to me, in my idea of 5 minutes or less, keeping it short and sweet in that regard, that's something I kind of want to test out and build that community there. And that could help with branding. In my head, in my vision, I'm thinking that would help for branding because I'd be talking on screen and being like, go to Great Pods. Here's what Great Pods does. I'm able to actually showcase it to the people. So as a part of organic marketing.
It brings the visual aspect to it. And like we said, I'm smiling as I'm listening to this. I'm just seeing how this has evolved. And even though sometimes you don't understand why things are happening the way they are, but like you said, you never would have guessed that YouTube would even have been a thing for you. But
and the podcast industry, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I'm just thinking entertainment. It's just that. Go ahead.
We've heard of the podcast space, was starting to take notice of YouTube last summer. And so when YouTube announced about, we're going to add podcasts for a while, I've been adding the trailers to the regular side of YouTube for over a year, but they announced podcasts like, I should probably pay more attention to it. Cause I would post it. It works well on the website. If you've noticed on the website, certain podcasts have a trailer and it's a YouTube embed. To me, I started posting posting the trailers on YouTube because this is hilarious learning, because it's kind of like a pivot. We had audio samples. It was just taking the RSS feed trailer, whatever one random episode or whatever it was, and you hit the play button. It wasn't really getting that many clicks. To me, I thought YouTube embedding a YouTube video would be easier. It would be easier for me, but also be more engaging, that there's a big box there that says trailer, right? I would have to manually upload the trailer, of course. I went through the long process of doing it. You remember Windows Media Player?
Oh,
And
yeah.
you know, it has the oscillations and all that graphics and everything. I would literally download the MP3, go to my Windows Media Player, play that clip, screen record it with all the oscillations because it was visually stunning. I didn't want to just have a logo there. I wanted something behind it that was visually stunning. Then I'd go into Premiere, I'd put that screen recording, then put the logo on top of it. Then I would go upload it to YouTube and then fill out the keywords, the description, everything else. So that was a long process. If you guys want a tip, if you're just having a logo, what sped up the process was this app called Headliner. And so then I started using Headliner because they also had like some visual thing, not as great as Windows Media Player. I always love that. Its history is nostalgic, but they still had some oscillation on it, and you could put up color changes and things like that to it. That cut my 20 to 25-minute process down to 2 minutes or less.
Wow.
And so then I started speeding up all the trailer postings and then adding that embed to the website. So another part of that learning is that people click on the YouTube trailer more than it was that Audible link. Now the Audible link is still there if I don't have a trailer up. But that also is something that I wanted was a trailer. That's a good indication of somebody's podcast. So all that completed is like all these learnings coming in last year as far as, okay, my process is getting quicker, adding the embed to the podcast page, other websites embedding the YouTube trailer to it because they're using it. YouTube made it easy to embed. So instead of using Spotify, which is a closed system, because you'd see a lot of Spotify links, but if you really wanted to listen to a podcast, download the app, download this, download that. YouTube, yeah, they do pressure you to download the app, but not as much if you're on PC.
Yeah.
If you just like click on it, it'll start playing. They're not promoting the app like that. So that's all great about that whole YouTube process and the silver lining and the positivity behind that. And the industry taking notice about YouTube. Now it's still kind of up in the air. You're testing it out. I'd love to hear your learnings on it. And maybe there's something there that I could try on my level as well. But it's been pretty good so far. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks we get some more original content out there and I can learn from that. One thing to note, one last thing on the YouTube front. Mr. Beast had, it's Mr. Beast, of course, but Mr. Beast had said, create 100 videos, then come back to me. When he gets people to be like, hey, what should I do? Give me advice, give me advice, give me advice, all that stuff. We talk about that. I thought it was really important on the original content side of things. It worked for me on the trailers. But it's not my content. I'm now in the process of that goal, whether it's 50 videos to 100 videos, but to at least go that far, then you can see what the analytics is telling you. Then you can pivot on that front. But that's on the YouTube front.
No, I think that's excellent, that breakdown you just gave. And yeah, YouTube is not going away. Google is not going away, and Google owns YouTube.
Yeah.
So I think you're smart by pivoting and adding that on to what you're doing in your marketing plan. And I'll share something Eric and I always talk about from the moment we started working together on this podcast. Every single one, and Eric, I know you can attest to this, we learn something after every single one. Like we do one like, we should have had this mic positioned over here or this over there. Or I realized something I did. I'm like, I should have asked that question this way. And even tonight, we're doing a new mic setup. So everything is
Are these the MV7s? Yeah, these are MV7s.
Yeah.
This is my mic at home. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a new positioning, and that's all Eric. He's like, if we just do it like this, the sound quality should be even a little bit better. And it's like, I think that's the mentality, and I love hearing this full story tonight because it's a constant improvement. Everything, there's a saying in acting, everything's a rehearsal. You're learning every single thing you do, but you gotta do the work. And you, my friend, have done the work, and you're continuously doing the work.
I'm tired.
Yeah. So I just want to say we're to the end here. But I always give the guests the last word. But before I do, where can people go to follow you? The website again. What's the best way people can support the Great Pods right now?
Yes, the easiest place to go is greatpods.co, not .com. That is owned by a Coffee Pods company, which I hope to buy eventually. Not the Coffee Pods, but the website. Gallon. But greatpods.co, and all the socials are on there. But you can go to I have all the socials ownership of Great Pods, so you can go to Instagram.com/GreatPods, Twitter.com/GreatPods, YouTube.com/@GreatPods, I believe. Yeah, they do the @ with the YouTube channels. And the newsletter, you can go to the newsletter, find the newsletter tab within greatpods.co, because if I told you the Substack, it would just get too long. So just go to the website, greatpods.co, and sign up the newsletter via the site. Yeah. Okay. Subscribe to the YouTube for sure. So then I have more subscribers and I can actually learn from what you watch, especially on the channel. Sign up for the newsletter as well, because I put a lot of time and effort into those weekly, consistently, and visit the site at least once a week.
Write a review.
Once a month, once a week. If you write, one of the greatest things about this, I know there's one more piece of juice. I don't want to forget this piece of juice is, as an entrepreneur, as we build the industry, whichever industry it may be, if you are building your own product, you get to make the rules. You can use guidelines, but you get to make the rules. And it took a while, maybe a year into this, that, oh, I'm in charge here. If you've never been a CEO or founder or whatever, it's hard. It's hard letting go of the worker mentality that you were, the customer support guy or marketing guy. Like, you're in charge now. You make the rules. So that's something like that. Still scares me, but it excites me, because one of the rules that I set up along the way is that I've met a bunch of independent writers. They blog about podcast reviews. So yeah, you have the New York Times, Vulture.com, things like that, the Times UK. They have professional reviews. I think I say professional reviews because they're in a big publication. It already gives them authority. These independent bloggers don't really have anybody advocating for them either. To me, I made the rule that if you write a consistent blog, a consistent review blog, it doesn't matter if it's once a month or once a week, but if you do it consistently, I will label you a professional reviewer or a professional critic. There's a difference between reviewer and critic, but a critic diving deep into the nuance of a podcast, reviewer saying you like it or not, but articulating why you should or shouldn't. But regardless, I will label you that. In case you didn't think that you were. And I've met some really good writers, and we have like a small little Slack group regarding that, but and encourage them to write more, because there needs to be more criticism. The art of criticism is slightly dying, depending on which article you read. But I love fostering that with the independent writers, and being able to give them this title that, yes, you are a professional critic or a reviewer, and it helps to encourage them. But yeah, letting go of like, no, you get to make the rules. So for you, my advice to you in this regard is, you own this podcast, right? You get to make the rules and how this is delivered, right? You don't have to listen to anybody else. You don't even have to listen to this advice. But,
no, I love it. I think it's great advice.
But you are you're the entrepreneur, right? You make the rules.
I love that.
If you start your own acting class or whatever, you get to make the rules. You're like, no, screw that Santa Monica class. This is the class. I'm making the rules here. Learn from what they did, the guidelines there. You can iterate on that. So that's one of the things I'm most, I don't want to say I'm most proud of, but I mean, it gives me confidence. I get confidence for starting to think like that.
Los Angeles, get behind this man, baby. Great Pods.
Podcast capital of the world. Let's
Podcast capital of the world, hitting the PR circuit. I always give the guest the last word. I know you just gave us some inspiration and advice.
That was the last word.
We can actually end on that if that was going to be your last word.
You make your own rules.
Captain Ron.
And start something. Start something new. Start something fresh. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have. Oh wait, there was a thing I started to do with Great Pods is because the idea of a review site is not new, right? So you're not reinventing the wheel. Wait, you're not starting something new. You're just reinventing it for your industry. That's all. The podcast industry didn't have it. I'm just reinventing that review system in the podcast industry.
I have to quote a great late mentor of mine that once told me, "Why reinvent the wheel when you can just change the tire?"
That's it. Yeah. I think I should quote that. I should quote that. That's much better.
Shout out to Mr. Blueprint. But Captain Ron, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
That was a lot. That was a lot.
No, this was a dense one. This was great. And I really look forward, especially to aspiring entrepreneurs or anyone in the startup space or anyone that just has an idea, to hear the journey and see the work that needs to be done, but see that if you do the work, the plane will start to move.
I'm excited to see the analytics on this one.
Me too. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Sam Dever podcast. Be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you watch the podcast, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@the Sam Dever podcast.